وذكر فإن الذكرى تنفع المؤمنين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Welcome. I'm Abdullah Oduro. When do we pay zakat? When do we pay zakat? Well, that varies based on the commodities or based on the actual product. As we mentioned, from the products of zakat are gold and silver and what derives from that, crop yields or what comes out of the earth from agricultural products or minerals and treasures, livestock from camels, cows, goats, and sheep, and also business inventory. These are the four things. Generally, when we talk about the majority of them from gold and silver, there is a lunar year that must elapse. In the lunar year, we're talking about the Islamic Hijri calendar, not the Gregorian calendar, not January to January, but rather Ramadan to Ramadan. And this is important because the lunar calendar differs from the Gregorian solar calendar by 11 days. It is approximately 11 days less. So you will see Ramadan shift every year. So it's very important to calculate and start from the lunar calendar. Once that surplus wealth that you have has elapsed, a lunar year has elapsed on that surplus wealth you have, then you take 2.5% of that. Now, there is also something called the nisab, or that is the ultimate threshold, as we mentioned, and zakat is an obligatory amount of your surplus wealth once it reaches a certain threshold or certain amount. So gold in particular is 85 grams of gold, and silver roughly is 595 grams. This is rough, between 85 and 87 grams of gold, and silver the likes, 595 grams roughly. If you have what is equivalent to 85 grams of gold and that has sat for a lunar year, then you take 2.5% of it. So we see here roughly today, gold is roughly 85 grams of gold is around $4,190. So let's say it's $4,190, 85 grams of gold. If that is sat in your bank account being cash, which is a derivative of gold, being cashed, if you have $4,190 in your bank account that has sat from the 1st of Ramadan till the 1st of Ramadan the next year, you take that amount and you multiply it by 0.025, or they say 2.5%, or you can divide it by 40. So if we were to look at today on our calculator, the amount of 85 grams of gold in cash is roughly $4,190. If that $4,190 has sat in my bank account for a lunar year, let's say the 1st of Ramadan till the next year, the 1st of Ramadan, then I would take that $4,190, multiply that by 0.025, which would come out to roughly $140. I would take that $140 and I would give zakat accordingly. And the same goes for silver. Whatever the amount is at the day of you giving zakat, you take that amount, and if it is in cash to the equivalent of 595 grams of silver, you would take that, multiply that by 2.5, and you would pay the zakat on that. So a lunar year is a condition for the zakatable amount. Concerning crop yields, it's a little specific. If there is irrigation-induced labor, then one would take 5% of that. And if it's non-irrigation induced labor, there's no labor, but you still have the crop yields, then it would be 10%. Now, the amount, which is considered the zakatable wealth or the threshold, is roughly around what they call khamsat awsuq, 5 awsuq, which is roughly around 653 kilograms. Now, a lunar year doesn't have to elapse on that. Once it reaches that, then you would take the 5% or the 10%, depending on if there is irrigation-induced labor. As far as animals, it gets a little more descriptive, and we're not going to get into all of that here, but just to give an example, or really the general rule is that depending on the animal, once they reach a certain number, that is the actual zakatable amount. So for instance, goats and sheep, once they reach 40, then you have to give one sheep. So when we talk about animals, depending on the animal, it will change. In camels, for instance, if it reaches 5, once you reach 5 camels, then you have to give 1 sheep, not a camel. So seeing that there is difference and a little more explicit, and it gets a little more, once the number increases, then you will have to give more of a certain animal. And the Sharia even gets a little more descriptive when talking about the type of animal that is given, to where it may transition from 1 calf to what is called a bint makhad, to where it'll be a female, young female cow. So when we see here roughly, when giving zakat, there is a certain time frame. Once it reaches and that time frame has elapsed, then you would take 2.5% or divide by 40 from that amount. Or if it is a certain amount from your crop yields or that which you have found from treasures, you would take 20% or 2.5 depending on which opinion you may follow, and you would pay zakat accordingly. So in conclusion, when looking at the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and taking from your surplus wealth and taking an amount of your surplus wealth, not the surplus, but taking a specified amount from that. When we look at this on a yearly basis, the community is providing for one another. And that's exactly what the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he mentioned to one of the companions when he was talking about buying and selling. He said, let mankind provide for one another. Let mankind provide for one another. The more the dollar bill goes through the hands in a local community, the more we are investing in our local businesses, and dare we even say, to a degree, national businesses. And even on an international level, we can invest globally. But when the dollar bill circulates through the hands of the people, firstly the immediate community, then after that, that is benefiting the general community, which, if you think, when you think about it, makes us more like a family. That we're spending on each other, that we look after each other. As we will learn, zakat is not only for the poor. Zakat is for people that are not the eligible to pay zakat. So if you're not a person that is eligible to pay zakat, you are a person that is eligible to receive zakat. And it's not a condition that you are poor. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those that are truthful with ourselves and with Allah when it comes to paying this charity or paying this money or means of helping our society and empowering those that need to be empowered. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.